So, welcome back to On This Week in History, and it is the Sunday breakfast show, and it is Professor Paul in his new guise of educating you. So I thought the facts are a bit disappointing today, but you'll never know. Sometimes find when I get going, they take on a life of their own.
Yeah.
So, first fact today is 1620, so not a lot going on in antiquity. In 1620, the Mayflower Pilgrims made their first landing in America, in Massachusetts. Something you may not know, Drew. Do you know that there's a very famous place in Massachusetts called Waite's Landing?
I did not know that.
W-A-I, after my ancestors.
Ah.
Yeah. Well, presumably they are, because not that many Waites around, are there? So,
Quite a few.
of course, Pilgrims weren't exactly a bunch of fun to be with. They weren't exactly renowned for their Christmas music and party attitude. 1666, Samuel Peeps. Have we heard of Samuel Peeps?
Mr. Peeps. No, I haven't.
Samuel Peeps is renowned for his diary. Samuel Pepys' diaries.
Okay.
So 1666, same year as the Great Fire of London. You said that like you actually knew.
Well, I know about the Great Fire of London. I didn't know the year though.
And do you have any idea who the king was at the time?
King George.
King Charles II. King George. Do you know when King George came around?
Nope.
At 1720.
Not far off.
that.
Not far off.
So Samuel Pepys reported on the first blood transfusion, which actually took place between dogs.
Oh. Testing it out.
They've never allowed Bridgewater people to have blood transfusions because certainly will give them blood to anybody else because then they would all become normal for Bridgewater, like Bridgewater people.
Everyone would be high if they did that, I think.
You reckon?
Yeah, with blood from Bridgewater.
1674, the Dutch formally ceded the New Netherlands (brackets New York) to us. It's quite funny. So I handwrite on This Week in History, and my secretary has typed Dutch formally cede New Netherlands to the USA.
Concede.
No. It's not to the USA because obviously it's to us. It should have been.
To the UK.
To us. So of course Dutch actually founded New York. And Britain very good at nicking all the big possessions off the Dutch. Dutch were the dominant sea power in Europe.
Wow.
They actually sailed up the Thames under the command of von Tromp. Yeah.
Von Tromp.
Did they have quite an empire as well then, or no? Oh.
Yeah, Dutch very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, New Amsterdam was New York, wasn't it? Before New York.
So it does shows that Drew doesn't pay attention. So in 1674, the Dutch formally ceded New Netherlands. So I always knew it as New Amsterdam,
Yeah,
but
that's what I thought.
It's actually referred to as New Netherlands here. Anyway, 1675, German mathematician Gottfried Leibniz demonstrated integral calculus for the first time. And I chose this because I think one of the things I'm most proud about with my brain is when I was studying my final exams to be a chartered accountant, we had to study calculus and differentiation. And I basically taught myself calculus and everyone hated it because I don't know if any of you have ever done any of this. And when it came to the final exams, question 1 on one of the papers was a 30-mark compulsory question on calculus. Ooh. And I just sat there and I looked around everyone thinking, losers, because I knew I would get more than 25 out of 30 for this question. And most people in the room would have got 0. So sorry, prepared. It's a very competitive world, unfortunately. So the sad thing is now, I think if I was to take that question today, I probably wouldn't get 2.
Really?
I've forgotten everything. It's not a straightforward subject, I can assure you.
And it's not something you would use generally in everyday life.
No. 1745, Bonnie Prince Charlie's army enters England.
Bonnie Prince Charlie?
Yeah, what can you tell us about Bonnie Prince Charlie?
A Scot, Charlie of Scotland.
You're just such a whatever, aren't you?
I don't know anything about history. It doesn't stick, laddie.
It's difficult to know quite what to say when you say things, to be honest. So Bonnie Prince Charlie. Bonnie Prince Charlie was the son of King James II, who was deposed by William and Mary.
Ah, yes, they were saying he was the true King of England. So he was trying to come back to England.
So he was a Stuart.
Ah, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
1775. Very interesting. This. So of course the hypocrisy that takes place, and obviously people sort of sit there and think that Abraham Lincoln was like a really good guy who didn't who was against slavery, and George Washington's obviously a great patriot. So shove this, people. 1775, George Washington forbids recruiting officers from existing black troops. It's pretty racist, isn't it? Do you want to say? George Washington was something like ridiculous, like 6'5", and his wife was called Martha, and she was something like the second richest woman in the world at the time.
Right.
Wow.
I'm trying to teach you things.
Yeah.
Yes, I think by today's standards, she would have been a billionaire.
What did she do?
She made hobnobs.
Oh.
I don't know, to be honest.
Right.
I'll find out for you next week. 1789, Benjamin Franklin wrote, it's quite something that's gone down in history, this. Nothing is certain but death and taxes. So this is maybe obvious, but it's pretty true, really, isn't it? Of course, unless of course you don't pay any taxes, you're on benefits, which would be a sizable minority of the population. It's about the people who live their whole life and never pay any tax. Do you realise that?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Is there not taxes you have to pay?
Well, not if you're not
Like,
working.
they're not unavoidable ones.
Well, if you don't have a job and you're basically
guess.
getting £40,000 a year in benefits, then you won't ever pay any tax, will you? So this is something that I remember I had a book when I was maybe 10, all about David Livingstone. And in 1871, Henry Morton Stanley, who was an American, he went looking for David Livingstone, who was a Scottish explorer, a great hero of the Victorian age, and he encountered Livingstone near Lake Tanganyika with the famous words, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume."
Mr.
He went, "No, geezer, my name's Bert."
He got it wrong.
You've come a long way to find them wrong. I'm not Livingstone, I'm Bert. Didn't really. Sorry about that. The last fact in this part of On This Week in History. In 1883, Treasure Island is first published. So who wrote this book?
Who wrote Treasure Island?
Can you tell me anything about Treasure Island?
Cromwell. No, he wasn't a writer.
Can you tell me anything about Treasure Island?
Any
characters?
The Black Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, the Black Mark.
Black Spot.
Black Spot. That's it.
There's treasure there.
What was the name of the main character?
Not Robinson
Jim
Crusoe.
Hawkins.
Jim Hawkins.
Long John Silver.
Long John Silver. That's the one. That's the one.
And it was written by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Robert Louis Stevenson. There we go. I did know that, but I forgot.
You're just such a legend. It's quite unbelievable, really. So hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to have a little break now, and we're taking off with Principal Edward's Magic Theatre.
On This Week in History with Outstanding Paul.
Welcome back to the second part of On This Week in History. It's Sunday. It's not Sunday, October the 14th. What's going on? Please do something to me, Drew. I need therapy. That's what happens when you get a cold, you see. It's, of course, November the 14th. November the 14th! November the 14th. Keep saying, November the 14th, November the 14th, November the 14th, November the... Red. Anyway, so what happened next? What happened next in On This Week in History? So, in 1889, Washington was admitted as the 42nd state of the USA. That's quite surprised me. So this is something Nathaniel was asking me about how much research I did for the show, and the answer is very, very little. And this surprised me, actually. I was trying to think of why it took so long. So if you think about, do we know where Washington is, Drew?
DC.
Where I asked where it was.
Where I don't know. It's somewhere in
North-
America.
Northeast
Mm.
America. It's over by
Near
New
Canada.
York and yeah, over near New York as well, isn't it?
So I'm not sure whether Washington was part of Canada or a sort of unaffiliated state or whatever. But in 1889, it became the 42nd state of the USA. So there's still 8 more to go at that point. So I'm struggling to think what I think the next. Obviously, Hawaii was 50.
Alaska,
so
maybe.
Alaska, very good. I thought Alaska had been bought by that point.
I'm not entirely
But,
sure. It seems weird to me that the capital was one of the last states to actually be founded.
It's not there, though, is it?
What, DC?
2 different places: Washington State and Washington City.
Oh. I thought Washington DC was in Washington. Okay.
Yes. So there we are. Yeah,
Learn
Washington was
something new
there
every
for George
day.
Yeah, there we are. 1908, Einstein presented his quantum theory of light. That's what I can say about it, isn't it?
Whoa.
Well,
Good theory that was, wasn't it? Or closely followed by the theory of relativity. Isn't that Einstein as well?
just such a legend, aren't you?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
1905, Norway held a referendum in favour of the monarchy. So up until that point, let's see if I get this right, Norway had been joined to Sweden, I think.
Okay.
And they split away from the Swedes, and they decided to choose as their king the brother of the King of Denmark.
Okay.
And as we discussed before, so he's one of my heroes, actually. I can't remember what his name originally was. Something like Christian or something.
Is this the person who defied?
Yeah, and he
The
changed his name
Nazis.
to King Haakon VII.
Mm-hmm.
Haakon being a sort of historically famous Norwegian king regnal name or whatever. So yeah, we like Norway, so big shout out to Norway. 1910, the first aeroplane flight from the deck of a ship.
Okay. From the. So was it like an airline carrier, or literally just a boat?
Well, I think it's a bit early to have an aircraft carrier. So
Must have been pretty big ship though.
yeah, I think they elastic banded it off.
Ah.
Oh, it didn't really.
They must have had some kind of something to propel it though. Surely. You'd think.
Well, an engine.
Steamboat.
If any of you know any about this, you do be sure to write in, phone in, and tell us what you think. 1918, this is at the end of the First World War, Poland declared independence. From who?
Germany.
No, it's not very good, is it?
No.
Austro-Hungary.
Ah, that's it. Austro-Hungary. Ooh.
I've got a photo of the ship that it was propelled off of.
Yeah?
It looks fairly similar to an airline carrier, to be fair. It's just got like a long
Or
strip.
even an aircraft carrier.
An aircraft carrier, sorry. It literally just looks like a ship with like a big runway, which is kind of what I was expecting, to be fair. Very
There we
insightful.
Not a lot of people know that. 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm fled to the Netherlands. So, what do we know about Kaiser Wilhelm, Drew?
Kaiser Wilhelm. He was the the president. Is it called of in Germany?
He was a king.
King Wilhelm. Yes, and the war was started because of him.
Yeah, really, yeah, and his ambition. Right, what else do we know about what was remarkable about the effectively the kings of Britain, Germany, and Russia?
They were related.
They were. Goodness me, Drew, this is remarkable.
See,
How closely?
Very good.
How closely were they related?
Cousins.
They were first cousins.
First cousin.
Yeah, so Kaiser Wilhelm, Nicholas II, and George V all had the same
Bloodline.
grandmother.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you find that with royalty a lot, don't you? Like bloodlines are kind of related all across the world.
Extraordinary. If you actually look at Tsar Nicholas II in particular, he looks like George V's twin. Extraordinary. Kaiser Wilhelm has a lot to answer for. So Kaiser Wilhelm effectively was very jealous of Britain, really, and wanted an empire for Germany and all that. And that's what led to, I suppose, Germany sort of wanting to extend its influence and build up its own little empire. And, of course, it rather backfired, and poor old Kaiser Wilhelm never returned from the Netherlands. So he spent his final days in the Netherlands, and that's where he kaputted.
Laid his final rest.
So in the theme of Germany, 1933, the Nazis came to power, and they received 92% of the vote.
It's crazy, isn't it?
One of the things that always gets me is if you listen to the media now, or anything that's when you listen to anyone talking about the Second World War, they tend to you never tend to hear them refer to the Germans. It's like they call the Nazis. It's the Nazis. Like the Nazis were completely different people to the Germans. Do you see what I mean? But I think it's it's worth remembering that 92% of Germans actually voted.
Did they start as extremist as they became?
Yes.
They were? Oh, okay. Wow.
Because Hitler published his book, didn't he?
Mein Kampf.
Yeah. And that was like a bit of a warning sign.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting view on the world. Anyway, so we haven't got that many facts left today. It's one of those sort of paucity weeks for some reason. So allowing me to get my breath back, we have Pat Benatar and the Heat of the Night.
On this week in history with Outstanding Paul.
Welcome back to the final part of On This Week in History, and it is definitely November, isn't it?
It's November.
I've banished all thoughts of October from my mind. Yes. I've banished that corrupt cell from my brain that was contaminating it. So, what we have next? Continuing the war theme. So, in 1940, most of Coventry is destroyed.
Coventry, wow. Blitz. There we go.
Yes. So, quite easy to start me off now because the Germans are very bitter about the fact that we obviously ended up bombing them to death, and I just find it remarkable, really, because it's like, the way I look at it is like you reap what you sow, don't you? So they didn't seem to mind too much when they were bombing the crap out of Coventry or Bristol. It's quite interesting, actually, in our part of the world. I used to talk to my granddad about this. Where we live is sort of on the flight path home of the German bombers, and they quite often used to drop their bombs, like in the Parrot or the Severn Estuary, So it must have been very interesting.
Crazy.
Of course,
where was the worst place hit by the Blitz?
London.
Obviously,
London, obviously, yeah.
But
yeah, the city that's famous for being destroyed is Coventry, obviously.
Right.
And even as far as like Edinburgh was being blitzed as well, wasn't it? Far down as Edinburgh.
There we are. 1942, the last Vichy French troops in Algeria surrender. So tell us all about the Vichy.
I can't remember. I can't remember.
So Vichy French being the French that basically acquiesced with the Germans. So France was basically divided into two. Vichy France under the control of Marshal Pétain, and I suppose sort of northern France, including Paris, which was under the control of the Nazis. So quite interesting this. I watched a programme the other day about the French Foreign Legion.
Right.
And by the time of the Second World War, there were many, many tens of thousands of Germans who had enlisted in the French Foreign Legion. So there were actually battles in the Second World War between individual regiments of the French Foreign Legion, obviously being pro-Ally or pro-German. You know, it's quite interesting. So as I say, as late as 1942, still had French troops fighting on behalf of the Axis powers, effectively. 1951. I was born under a wandering star. Who knows that? Who knows that wonderful musical?
I do, because we played it before.
Paint Your Wagon. So Paint Your Wagon opened in New York City, and it's a remarkable film, really. Hand me down my can of beans, hand me down a can of beans, and I'll be on my way. Out the window go them beans, out the window go them beans. Do you think
So what was it actually about then?
It's about a prospecting town in America. So basically, obviously, this town is just full of men, and effectively, they used to sort of arrange for women to be brought in. A beautiful lady called, so the actress was Jean Seberg, who in herself is really a really fascinating story. She was basically terrorized by the CIA, and she was
life?
and she was effectively sort of killed by them. Actually, it's very. You want to read about it. It's very, very interesting. But Jean Seberg's absolutely beautiful woman. And in the film Paint Your Wagon, she becomes the love interest battle between Clint Eastwood and Lee Marvin. And Clint Eastwood has a role which is completely different to any role we had before or since. And he sings a really good song called I Talk to the Trees, but they don't listen to me. And I have to say, I rather like it. Clint Eastwood was a big hero of mine when I was a little boy. He was Rowdy Yates in Rawhide, which is how he became famous. And then, of course, he got his big parts playing the man with no name in the spaghetti westerns, which are, to me anyway, compelling viewing. Very misogynistic, but we'll forgive him for that. 1952, the first regular UK singles chart was published in the New Musical Express.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Fair old time ago that was, wasn't it? What we got there then?
What are you doing?
What we got there?
I was pausing there. 1960. No, it's not 1962. What's going on here? Honestly, 1862. The Ulysses S. Grant issued orders barring Jews for serving under him. That's pretty awful, isn't it? Ulysses S. Grant was effectively was in charge of the Union armies in the Civil War against the Confederates. And after the war, he became the president, and he actually served 2 terms. Right. So he was re-elected. So obviously, just goes to show anti-Semitism has been alive and kicking for quite some time.
Goes far back.
1965, the USA sends 90,000 soldiers to Vietnam. So what do we know about... You might know this, but if you don't, just guess. Do we know what the average age of soldiers drafted to Vietnam were?
19?
They were, yeah. Wow. Of course, that famous, song from Paul Hardcastle that got to number 1. No, 19.
Sad times.
Well, I think one of the worst things about the Vietnamese War is not only was the complete waste of life, but the fact is that those poor kids that did serve effectively were basically treated as like non-humans when they came back. So didn't have any rights or anything. It was absolutely quite appalling. 1974, this is quite a good story. Salmon is discovered in the Thames for the first time since 1833.
Wow. Found its way back there. Up the Thames River.
I think it's the same one.
Yeah. Ancient salmon returns.
I'll tell you what I was watching a thing about the other day. there was I was watching a program about an E-boat or a U-boat in the First World War, and the commander of the U-boat claimed that he sank. Well, he did. So this is a fact. He sank a British merchant ship, and the British merchant ship, as it sank, exploded, and he claims that with the boat as well, this 60-foot aquatic monster shot up into the air, writhing in agony, obviously.
Oh, wow.
And so it's quite. You have to check it out. Quite interesting.
Was it a whale? Was it an aquatic monster? That sounds a bit dubious, doesn't it?
We were saying about
a bit
this
like a huge crocodile
on Pandora's Box, that there's a really high chance that there are still at least 3 sea monsters in the sea that haven't been discovered.
Why 3?
It's just based off. Callum will explain it a lot better than I can, but it's based off a certain graph. For the amount of space there is that we haven't discovered, the chances are that 3 is the amount that we haven't discovered yet.
So, it's generally considered, funny enough, I know a little bit about this, it's generally considered that it's very likely that effectively what would be considered to be an aquatic dinosaur would have managed to live until fairly recently, until such time as pollution became a serious issue. So they think it's almost certain that if you were able to go and navigate the seas in, say, the 1800s, you would definitely come across creatures that were millions of years old. Well, not, but
the species.
Species, yeah.
Here's an interesting one. With films such as Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, do you think that there is a chance that will come in the near future? Genetic engineering to create dinosaurs
beyond all doubt.
And stuff like that?
Yeah, beyond all doubt. Anyway, 2 final facts today. 1988, the oldest known insect fossils reported, 390 million years old.
Wow.
Which is older than me.
Yeah, quite a bit older than you.
Thanks, mate. Final fact today. Astronomers discovered a super Earth 3.2 times bigger than us, orbiting the red dwarf star Barnard star 6 light years away.
Oh, wow. So when you say that, you said an Earth-like planet, was that? Or?
Yeah, so a planet 3.2 times bigger than us.
Ah, okay.
Discovered orbiting Barnard star, which was 6 light years away. And Barnard star itself is a dwarf red star.
Wow.
Yeah, see, well, no notes then, mate.
No notes.
Yeah.
Top of the dome.
So, hope you enjoyed On This Week in History. As much as I enjoy doing it. One of the things that I'm really proud about, being a bit of a geeky, like to know everything, is that it's definitely improving my University Challenge performance. There was a question the other day about when did Portugal become a republic, and I said 1910, and it was. And I said, I only knew that about because it was on This Week in History about 3 weeks ago. I think you've either got one of those brains you remember things or you don't. So
I definitely don't.
So there we are.
On This Week in History.
Sponsored by the Great British Expos.
Home of the UK's largest regional business expos. Find out more at greatbritishexpos.co.uk.